Now we're at the last part of our session, and we're going to talk about traffic issues. Traffic issues are being seen differently by each single client. Some clients define a traffic issue with having slow traffic and not seeing anything coming in over the last couple of days. Other clients define having a traffic issue by simply having a slow traffic. Instead of the 5 completes, which I get every day, I just get 1 complete. And for each single time, there are several points which we can go through. A general checklist should always be: check that the setup on your scripting platform is correct, and compare the metrics which you see on your performance tab, on your respondents tab, with the metrics which you are seeing on your scripting site. That usually already gives a first indicator. Is it something with my setup on my scripting site, or is it something which potentially just is on the targeting side? One of the most common issues here is potentially that we are actually looking for something which has a low IR and is a niche target. While at the beginning, we did have quite a lot of profile sample available to get a rapid progress being done. But once that targeting sample is replenished, we are using GenPop and need to get new people profiled. And that can lead to the point where the traffic suddenly dries down. And in those cases, we would need to change the targeting which we have and potentially take some of the targeting attributes out and take into account that we broaden our targeting, but potentially get more traffic onto it because we are starting to target people who are not specifically targeted for what we were looking for, but assume that some of the people which are not targeted with that specific attribute within our panel are still going to reach your survey and going to get through, rather than screening out because of the broadening of the target group. But let's go into one of our test studies where we actually had some starts on it. Go to the respondents page and check how the performance looked here. Okay, we can straight away see which one of the 2 target groups had been live, because here's our cost is 0. Here we had 626. Click on the performance. And what we can see here straight away is we had 2 completes out of 800. And our focus now to first investigate what can potentially be wrong on this study is by actually looking at this metrics, which shows the attempts, and of those attempts, where do people fall out? In this case, we had 302 starts, but just 1% was a complete. And about 55% actually screened out, which is an indicator, okay, potentially our incidence rate is lower than what we've expected, and we get that confirmed here. We've put in 80%, just at 1%, which means that the target group which we're looking for is potentially more niche than what we initially expected. On an occasion like this, we would potentially go into our scripting software and try to loosen up some of the screening in order to get more completes on a better level in again. Or we take into account that, okay, we do have a lower incidence rate. We're looking for a niche target. It is more niche than what we expected, and potentially need to adjust what we're actually targeting for. In this case, we have 1% to 80. But what we've set up was age, gender interlocked, and we set up the primary internet service providers. And you can see here for each single target group as well, for each single line, we can see these stats. And we can see here, the more orange we have, the more screenouts happen on each single one. And especially on the older population, we can see 70% screen out rate on the 51 to 99-year-old females. Here we got 68 on the 51 to 19-year-old males. So either I would try to find an additional targeting attribute where I would simply duplicate my target group, add an additional targeting parameter where I would think this probably fits my targeting better and I will get a higher IR out of it. Or I go into the scripting software and loosen up the screening criteria. Either way will work. And let's have a look at another example. In this case, I have prepared something. We can see here that we've achieved 237 complete out of 450. Recognizes the fieldwork is running slow. You can see our incidence rate is actually higher than what we originally wanted. We put in 80, we had 83. And also, we've put in 20 minutes, have 17 minutes. But what will cause the issue here is just what we can see on this field once again. We can see straight away, see here, 50% of that graph is yellow. Yellow is incomplete. So we have a dropout rate in our survey of 49%. Whenever the dropout rate is that high, our system will deprioritize your project because we are actually losing respondents which are going into your survey, never come back, and because of that have a bad survey experience. So what we need to do in those cases is check our scripting software, have a look, where do those people are dropping out. If we do not see any point within our survey that they are dropping out, double check the redirects. If somebody is a complete or screen out or quota for your site, but does not get properly redirected to our site, they will end up as an incomplete as well. And then high incomplete number is the worst enemy of your project. And let's have having a look back at our UK and UK2 project, which was one of our test projects. Another issue which we can see from having slow traffic could be simply the devices we've chosen. The one thing we need to take into account is mobile and tablet usage is growing and growing that around the world. If our study is set up just for desktop, we will automatically know the traffic will essentially be slow. Not necessarily slow, but slower than on a normal study. And the other point which you do need to take into account is having just a desktop-only study will potentially, without any quotas in it, bias our data towards a more older generation, which has a way higher percentage of doing surveys on a PC. The younger age groups majority do all of the surveys on either the tablet or on their mobile. And that is a trend which is growing and growing and growing. To showcase another traffic issue which can be caused by simply having a very niche target like this, we're going back to our dashboard, going into our test project which we created earlier, go into the respondent section, and have a look at our targeting attributes. In this case, we did set it up: age, vehicle, geo, gender, and own rent. The one thing we can see here already is for the majority of my quota cell lines, everything is green. But we have one which is low with 8 completes. It still shows green, which means we can achieve this. If we scroll up here, we can see we have a yellow one. Having a low feasibility still potentially makes your project feasible, but there is a risk that we might not be feasible. And the reason to solve issues like that is we need to keep in mind, once we launch this target group, that we had something in our targeting attributes which potentially limited the amount of total completes which we were able to achieve. In this case, we wanted 500 completes. And if we do not get the 77 here, we will not get to the 500 completes because we have an allocation on each single age line. And that can be a risk. That is something we always need to keep in mind when launching a study. But what we can do, once we do see that at the 3rd, 4th day, monitor the field, we didn't see much progress from the 3rd overnight to the 4th day. I would definitely pause your study, clicking on the 3 dots, pausing, and taking out one of the targeting parameters. The one thing which we do know is that Once we've launched this target group, we are just able to modify the allocations, but we are not able to actually take any of the targeting attributes out. So what we would need to do is, we would need to clone our RU after we pass the target group. Let's call this one EU new target. Then set this one up again. Leave it on the 500 completes and everything for now. And do take something out. I mean, what we usually do apply on things like that is common sense. So we do try to assume, okay, even though we have selected something in here which will limit the sample pool we're tapping into, and people actually would need to be reprofiled in order to fit our criteria. But what is something which potentially could everybody have without them being profiled? In this case, for example, auto vehicle own lease is one option, or own rent. It might not be that obvious that own or rent, that either one would have one thing, but in a country which is quite big like Australia, I assume that almost everybody would have a car unless they do live in a very big city. So I would start by probably taking the auto vehicle own lease variable out. Now I'm gonna have a look, okay, how many completes, if this would be live, I would see the performance tab here. Did I already achieve? Let's assume we've already achieved 350 completes in this target group, which means we're just 150 completes missing. In this case, I would adjust this to 150 completes. Set up the remaining allocations to what I would need according to my scripting software. Then would run the feasibility again. And would already see now, if I would want 23, 16 to 24-year-olds, I can without any problem get them. But the one thing which we forgot so far is we are already on the third day and we wanted 5 days in field. So we need to reduce this to 2 as well. Then run the get estimate again. And we will be able to see that we will have a different number here. In this case, 83, still feasible. So what I would do now is connect this to my survey and would simply launch this one again, with the assumption that I potentially will not have my 80% incidence rate, which I had in my Tara group down here, because I will have some people which will screen out now because I don't have the auto vehicle own lease variable in it anymore, where I specifically just targeted people who own a car, but assume that a broad majority of the people which I'm targeting in each of those regions, in those age brackets and in gender, and who own a house, will have a car as well. That is just one of the scenarios which you can use if you see that you're going to have a slow traffic. And that is probably one of the most common ones. Another common slow traffic issue is that you do set something up with interlocked quotas and something fills up always quicker than something else. So one thing you can do is, that's what our PMs on internal managed app projects would do as well, as try to front load certain target groups. In this case, we do know that, for example, 16 to 24-year-old males are always difficult to reach. So what I would probably try to do, if I have the region open, as well as own rent, I would set this up for 23 completes now. Add those 23 completes just here, put everything else 0. You can see we got the 23 out of 23, 100%. We can save. Here, I can see I don't really mind where they're coming from, But the one thing I can recognize here now is, because I limited to 23 completes, where I just need my 16 to 24 years to come from, I do have a quite limited amount what I can put in here. So you can go a risky route as well. Put this up to 50 and adjust everything in here 40-50 as well. And once again, down here, I put my females in 0. I want just males because I want to front load them. And that is how I would start the field. That would ensure that I would, at the beginning of my study, just collect 16 to 24-year-olds who I don't mind where they're living in. Male who own a house would be collected. The one thing I need to keep in mind though is, at the moment, I've oversampled over here, which means I went for 50 and I went for 2 days. I usually would do something like that, a front loading for 1 day, then would pause my field and then simply go into my allocations or into my setting and add my other target groups 40 ages in again as well. And launch this. That's just another tip on how you potentially can avoid a traffic issue towards the end, which can be created by something where you have interlocked quotas, even though you technically set them all up in a row. The most common issue will potentially always be that you're going to be ending up looking for 16 to 24-year-old males who have, in case you've set up income, who have $1 million of a national income and need 50 of them. And that is then a situation where you will not get around having to adjust quotas on your scripting platform just to get those last 16 to 24-year-olds. The last example which we're going to cover now is exclusions, which can have an impact on your traffic flow as well. If you do have too many exclusions in field, it is possible that at a certain point your study will dry out and you will not be able to get fresh targeted sample in it. So one option you will always have as well is, if you have those exclusions on, for example, if you would have selected at the point we launch, those are active, we can always pause the field and take out one exclusion by another to free up completes from previous studies as well. That can potentially, especially for very niche targets, help your traffic flow as well. And with this one, we're going back to our dashboard. Thank you for taking the time to watch this video, and we hope you found this video series helpful. Please reach out to us in case of any questions, and be sure to ask Dynata for end-to-end help with your research and audience needs.